Hello and welcome to M6 to New South Wales, the biannual podcast where we talk about nothing but sports, and even better sports. Joining us, as always, on episode two is Steve and Josh and myself, Isaac. It's been a bit of a great break, so we've got a few things to sort of like catch up on. For example, the Ashes. We didn't wrap that up, so we're going to do that. We've got the World Cup. We've got a couple of talks about the summer ahead for Australia. Obviously, we've got England's tests and a little bit more things to sprinkle in there. So, first of all, boys, how have we been?
Boysies, it's happening.
It's all
It's,
Right. It's
weather's
been far too long to do this.
yeah, it has been far too long. And I just got to say, boys, weather is fantastic over here.
is it?
Fantastic.
Well, I don't want to alarm you, Josh, but like over in the old U of K, we've got some lovely weather at the moment. We're reaching highs of 13 degrees in January at the moment, so it's all sunny. So what kind of chilliness are you getting?
Sunny and 32 degrees. Mate.
Ah yes, the joys of the southern
Yeah.
hemisphere.
I was just about to say, yeah, I don't think he doesn't drop below 20 degrees for the next week. So Josh can sod right off.
It's incredible.
Um, and we're on a balmy 7 degrees today. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah,
Ah,
it's always weird hearing about just seeing the weather the other side of the world compared to us. Like we were getting snow the other week, and Josh was just putting photos in the chat that we've got of just pure sunshine that he was getting. And it was brilliant. But we're not here to talk about the weather. We are here to talk about I say sports at this point. Let's be honest. We're just on cricket, aren't we today?
I was just about to
Um,
say it's staying on cricket for a while.
no,
I think we should. I think we should. Should we wrap up Aussies? The Aussies coming over here and pretending that they won the Ashes back.
well, we got the moral
Um,
victory, so it's all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
How's
throwing
the
that fishing
moral?
line out for Josh there.
Oh, boys, how was the moral victory? Like,
Oh,
5-0 in the moral Ashes. He
oh, it was
he
great.
absolutely smashed it.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. Morally, we're sitting on our high horse. We've got the plinth up. We're looking down on
Mm.
everyone. We've not actually lost the actual Ashes, but 5-5 nil the moral Ashes is honestly it's something that dreams are made of. Honestly.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of
Like,
the
I don't know.
Come on, if
speak
Old Trafford wasn't wiped out, we'd have won it. So simple as.
would have, which we actually attended actually. So
If you didn't change the ball, if you didn't fucking illegally change the ball to a ball that was from a different year, we would have won it. So shoulda, coulda, woulda, mate.
And we didn't change it, mate. The umpires did. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, so you're on board with umpires' decisions now? What's that?
Some of them.
you know,
Some of them.
some of them are a bit contentious, but we've all got our flaws. Speaking of the actual Ashes, main things sort of like takeaways. Obviously, it was two really really hard fought, like I say hard fought, two really really hard going sides, just absolutely giving it the big ins to each other, and it was really a good thing to see. I'm all for like friendly competition and stuff like that, but let's be honest, we all love sport when it gets a little bit nasty and a little bit gritty, don't we? It's what we all live for. Like it's the tribalism, it's the rivalry, it's what makes it so good, isn't it? The ability to be able to sort of like rub it in on someone's face when you do win. And we played five and we've drawn, so nobody really gets that.
No, what I would say is I think a few decisions. I think for either team would have caused a different result one way or the other. It was probably one of the closest ones I've seen in a long time. But I will say just a couple of days of not good weather, and I think we'd have done the impossible, or what everyone thought would have been impossible after you went 2-0 up.
Josh?
I mean, yeah, fair to say. I think it was one of those series where, at the start of the series, I thought, you know, Australia was very marginally the better side. It was like
Yeah,
you were splitting hairs, and then we went. I think it was the third test was another really close one. They won by a couple
yeah,
of wickets. And then there's a bit of rain at Old Trafford, obviously. And one thing I will say about that Test match though is the Australians knew, if you remember, they knew that there was going to be rain on days 4 and
yeah.
5. and they picked an extra batsman. And I know that it was a long time ago, but Mana scored an unbelievable 100 to save the Aussies, and you still had two batsmen at the crease, and we were only 100 runs behind. So whilst we were behind on the game, the Australians, I don't think they would have thought they were out of that game. There was certainly a long way to go, and we were, long odds to do anything with that game. But I think knowing that there was rain around, we still had plenty of batting to come. When the rain hit, I think Australians planned for that, and it's unfortunate from England fans' point of view, but I actually thought it was pretty well thought out by the Australians to play an extra batsman and bat genuinely down to number 9. Thought that was pretty clever on their part. And if you look at that last test at the Oval, we got half the runs. With our opening partnership, the ball changes and you take, I think it was 10 for 150, or something along those lines. After we put on, I think we put on 100 and I can't remember what the exact partnership was, but I think the partnership was close
It's
to
a decent
150.
partnership.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a decent partnership.
That ball changed, and then you just rip through us, and it's one of those things. Like I've spoken to a lot of people about it, and we ended up losing that test by 50 odd runs. If you don't think that ball change was worth 50 runs, then I don't know what game you're watching. So, and I thought Australia was the better side of the Oval up until that point, but like
You've got to play what's in front of you. That's the only thing I'd say. I think because it works both ways. We could have got like the first ball could have done it, and we could have changed the ball, and it would have done the opposite kind of way. So what I did see was two sides that were just so competitive and so just testing each other. I think if we'll talk about the current tests that are going on at the moment in a minute, but like it just brought out the best in everyone, and I think it kind of fills me with so much optimism for actually coming down to you at the end. Is it end of this year or end of next year? I can't quite remember. But it's next year, isn't it? I think, yeah. But I actually think if we can keep the bulk of our team, because we've got quite young players coming that came through or coming through at the moment. I think that's the way that they're looking as well, is trying to embed those youngsters in for that kind of for coming up into the Ashes with you, because that seems to be the big thing, isn't it? It's getting one over you. In Australia, it's a different devil. I think over here it's a little bit more of a touch and go series most of the time. Whereas in Oz, you seem to just bowl us out with fast bowlers all the time. So if we can get some good momentum going into it, I think it'll be a different beast this time round that you get from us, which will hopefully be good. But we'll talk about the upcoming Ashes in a bit. I'm happy with the Ashes summer, even though it was a draw. And it just brought back cricket for me. I think we've missed this type of Test cricket in the world, but I also think it sets other things up. It set the Cricket World Cup up beautifully. But then I have different thoughts about the Cricket World Cup. So I hope you guys agree. I think the Ashes summer was more than what I expected.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was. I thought it was. This is actually my second Ashes. No, third. Sorry, third. Because as we all know, I started getting into cricket in the 2019 World Cup by the circumstances of it was just on in work. So what a start for me. But yeah, this is the first Ashes that I've watched where it was actually been like a contest, like properly, like England weren't counted out almost at the beginning, if that makes sense. Because I think coming into, forgive me if I'm getting this slightly wrong, but 2019 we were in a bit of a bad spell, and Australia were obviously just, they were like on the up and up, as they always tend to be fair. Then it was 2020, was it the last Ashes that was in Australia, was it? It was like shortly after, wasn't it? Or was it 21?
2021, if I remember.
21.
21, I think.
Yeah, so 2021, we were absolutely torn apart to the point where the first ball of the entire series set the precedent of what was really going to happen. What a first ball, by the way! I can't even take it away. That was some incredible bit of scenery.
Bloody wasn't. It was stupidity.
No, it was, but it was a good moment. You know what I mean? I can still hear the commentary now in my head. And then obviously this is the first one where we've kind of got into it. And it's like, oh my god, England are actually like they have a real good chance of actually doing it. And obviously you've got to then go and do it. But you know the feeling going into it was like real feel good. It was almost like I want to say it was like it felt almost like cricket's equivalent of like Euro '96 almost. You know, like when it was just like everyone had a good feeling about it. There was like no negativity. It's whatever happens. But you know we have got a good chance of doing it. So to actually then go on and actually fight for it, considering like the first test match kind of went a little bit Pete Tong really with the early declaration was bold, but you know that's the way that that's the way that we play cricket now, and it did kind of go a little bit wrong for us. So I just feel like it really does set us up really good for the future, just sort of like of Test cricket in general for an England fan, especially because we were kind of in the doldrums for a bit, weren't we?
Well, let's be honest, Josh. If you'd have a better thing, but I would say the pressure was on Australia for the Ashes, rather than on England, because England were obviously we just lost route. We were kind of getting this new management style. Yes, it sounded good and it seemed like it was getting us in a good place, but realistically, you were the number one Test team in the world. You'd just beaten India in the World Test Championship final. So really, it was more on you than it was on us, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was, and I remember sort of sitting back after the Oval Test match and disappointed that we lost that test because, as I said before, I thought we were going to win that test match, and then I remember sort of sitting back and be like, oh, well, it's all right, we've retained the Ashes, and I remember watching some of the interviews afterwards and seeing how disappointed the Australians were. Um,
Yeah.
and that like I don't mean this to wind you up or go fishing, but to see how elated the English were compared to how upset the Australians were sort of showed me it's that old adage. It's like the winning draw and the losing draw in cricket.
Mhm.
Izaak, if you're not familiar, basically like regardless of whether there's a draw, it always feels like there's a winner and a loser.
Mm-hmm.
I think England felt like the winner in that drawn series, and the reason being not just because they came from behind, um, because even though the English played very well in that series and it was a very even series, but historically over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, Australia's been the far better side
Yeah.
out of the two in Test
Yeah.
cricket. So I think they've sort of fought against the odds, I guess you could say, and drew the series. And yeah, like I said, listening to how upset they were, I think the biggest thing was is they all spoke about all the Aussie, like the older guys on the side, like your Warners and your Smiths and your Kawajas, like those sorts of guys that they really wanted to win a series in England. They said 2019 they drew the series, and you could see at the end of that series, Australia had the winning draw, right? Like they were over the moon with that draw. And then this time around, they really wanted to win it, and ultimately they were 50 runs short.
Yeah.
Or
Do you not
in
think
that
it
third
was?
test match they were 2 wickets short. So I think it was one of those things. It was bittersweet. The fact that they retained the Ashes was great, and not something that should be understated either. Drawing a series in England, or any series against one of the test playing teams. So that if you get a drawn series in India or in England, that's a massive result. So
Do you not? Do you not think, Josh, that it was partially down to the fact of a lot of those guys, obviously Warner's just retired after the Pakistan series that you had, but we're not going to see a lot of those batsmen and possibly bowlers again in an Ashes over here. Do
definitely.
you not think that was part of the reason why it upset you guys? And let's be honest, if England if any team goes 2-0 down, if you come back to draw, with one test that is wiped out, you're probably going to feel like the winning test team in that series. But I think the age of your test team is something that probably hit home a little bit. Those guys had a chance a real
Yeah,
chance. You had 3 tests to win that series, and they didn't get
yeah,
over that line. So I think that probably hit home a little bit harder than actually drawing it.
definitely. And to be honest, like I said, I was a little bit surprised watching all the boys' reaction in the interviews, particularly seeing guys like um, Warner and Kawaja, like that almost look like they.
Bit of technical difficulties on my end. Then
You know,
sorry, it kind of cut out. Josh, sorry to go. Just ask you to repeat that last 10 seconds.
just saying, like the looking at some of the guys like
Warner and
Warner
Kawaja.
and Kawaja, yeah, they look so upset. Like they look so dejected after the Oval Test match, and I thought, made me immensely proud to be Australian because it's like fuck, like you've just drawn a series in England. That's happened. Um, an away series like you guys won here in 2010, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, like that's probably the worst Australian team I've ever seen versus the best English team I've ever seen. So was it Stuart Broad that said those series are void? But yeah, anyway,
Uh,
2010 series is void. But
oh, are we doing that one as well? Are we?
to draw a series away is such a big effort. So they've made me really proud actually to see the boys, want more than just a draw. But obviously it wasn't to be. But yeah, the team next time around will be incredibly different.
Yeah.
Warner and Kawaja won't be there. Smith probably won't be there.
Well,
Marnus ahead.
let's go
But
into the next Ashes. We'll skip a little bit and go to the next Ashes
Yeah.
because I'm I'm very excited. I'll be honest. I think if we keep this mindset and keep the bulk of our team, I'll be happy if we can have 2 or 3 of the really faster bowlers that we seem to have unearthed a little bit over the last 18 months. But let's stay with Australia for a minute because I think you're right. I think it's going to be a massively different team. Um, I think that it could hurt you because I feel like you're not. I'm going to throw something out there, and I'm not sure whether you'll agree. I'm not sure if you'll disagree, but I think you have missed a massive chance to possibly bring a youngster into the Aussie setup, the surroundings, and let them blood in for an opener, and instead you've gone for Steve Smith, who, unfortunately for yourselves, I know he was 13 out off 50 last night, but realistically, his starts as an opener hasn't gone too well. Do you think that was a good decision, or do you think that they need to start bringing in some fresh blood because you're not going to have it for next year?
no, I like the move. Remains to be seen if it's going to work out for us. But he wanted to do it. He wanted to go at the top of the order. And for me, he's the best batsman, not just Australia. He's the best Test batsman in the world. And if he says I want to open, you fucking let him open.
Yeah, you cave, don't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those. I think with him, um, you know, I think everyone's sort of panicking a little bit because he was so good at 4. Um, for such a long time, I think everyone's kind of panicking. Like, let's not forget, he's been dismissed twice as an opener. I don't think we need to sort of, it's not panic stations yet. And he got 2 good balls that got him out as well. So it's one of those. I think opening's a much tougher job, as we know.
Yes.
But I think he'll do all right. And I think last night he played really well. As you say, he's 33 not out overnight, so fingers crossed he can go on and get a big score and get the boys home. But I think in terms of blooding young players, if you look at the other openers that Australia's got, we've got guys that you would know. We've got Matty Renshaw, Marcus Harris, and Cameron Bancroft. They're the other openers that are sort of in contention, and they're just all of them are averaging, other than Bancroft, all of them are like Harrison Renshaw. They're averaging under 40 in Shield cricket, and Bancroft averages like mid 40s in Shield cricket. Whereas Cameron Green, who they brought back into the side, he averages like 55 in Shield cricket. So they're just trying to get the 6 best batsmen into the side. And I think if you look at our batting lineup now, without Warner there, when you've got Smith, Kawaja, Labuschagne, Green ahead, and Marsh. I think they are our best batsmen. They're a top
Feel
six.
like I feel like they're looking, and this might be a bit contentious, and I'm taking what England are doing at the moment and kind of asking why you're not kind of doing the same thing. But I feel like you are thinking about the here and now
Mhm.
rather than the what could be coming up, because at the same time you're looking in a year's time, are you still going to have the Kawaja, are you still going to have the Smith? Yes, you're probably going to have Labuschagne, you're definitely going to have Green in there, but I just feel like I'm going to be honest. I feel like they've took the easy route. That's what I
Yeah,
feel like at the moment. And of course it's going to work. Steve Smith is too good of a batsman to not make it work. If he still gets if he gets out cheaply overnight tonight, or obviously today for you guys, but if he goes out cheaply again, I think he could possibly start. Bowlers will start going, oh, we've got a chance here. Whereas when Steve Smith came in for the last what 8 years, but bowlers have gone, ah, Christ, like, here he is. So
yeah,
It was an aura.
maybe it might, yeah, of course it is. It's that aura, and I just feel like that the selectors were thinking about the here and now rather than
yeah.
having that one eye on the future. But we never know. We never know.
Yeah, I think if you look at it in that way, you can look at it one of two ways. I mean, for me, I'm a massive proponent of just picking your best side always.
Yeah,
The best 11 that are available to you, you pick them. And if you look into the future, like I can understand that, and I think in a way they kind of are, because the first to go out of Smith and Khawaja is probably going to be Khawaja. He's 37.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, definitely.
he's probably going to go first. Smith, a couple of years younger, so I think Khawaja probably retires beforehand. And you're probably looking at some of those young guys. Your Marcus Harris's, Matt Renshaw's, Cameron Bancroft's, Will Pukowski's, like those sorts of guys. They're all young guys. So to have
Yeah,
them come into the side, to have them come into the side with someone like Steve Smith at the top of the order, I think is probably the more likely scenario. I think Steve Smith probably will hold on for the next Ashes series. Khawaja, not so sure. I think with Khawaja now, he's at an age. If he keeps making runs, then he'll stay, because he's made it pretty clear that he wants to keep playing. But if he doesn't make runs, he could be in trouble. So, but he's been
yeah.
he's
I,
been magnificent for us. So he's good.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's just been named in the opening as the opener on the Test team, hasn't he? Of the year,
Yeah,
which is definitely
ICC test.
a nice little,
Yeah,
yeah, ICC team of
ICC
the
Test
year.
Player of the Year. Yeah,
Yeah,
he won
which
the
is
Test Player of the Year award
unbelievable.
too, which and he's just scored a mountain of runs. Like we know in the Ashes series in England, he was top run scorer there. Yeah,
I
I
feel
thought he was.
with the bit of controversy about putting Smith there, I feel like possibly Kawaja won't get, because obviously Warner, and one of the things that people were saying going into the Ashes, and when he turned around and said that I'm going to finish playing after the Boxing Day Test, or the Pakistan series, wasn't it? Like people really put the boot in a little bit. Like, why is he getting it? He's not played well for the last 2 years. He's not had the runs. Why is he getting to call time in his own career? And I think that might put Kawaja in the opposite position. I think if he starts slowing down and starts losing and nicking off a single or teams, I think the axe will come quicker than what we probably saw on David Warner.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think um, I think the thing with David Warner is that I think a lot of the commentary around David Warner, you know, I don't think anyone that really analyzes cricket and ignores personalities and whatnot would have thought David Warner wasn't in our best 11. He absolutely was. He absolute gun. Even though his numbers weren't as good as they have been, they weren't terrible. Um, he scored a couple of fifties in the Ashes. Scored some runs in Australia last year, big 200. Then first test of the Australian summer this year against Pakistan, scored another 100. Like
Yeah,
his numbers were fine. And the other thing that people ignore a lot as well is his fielding, as well, has already been missed.
yeah,
Um, as a first slipper, it's such an important position. We've dropped a couple in the cordon against the West Indies, and it's made this Test match in particular look a lot closer than it actually is. And David Warner he didn't drop anything in there.
No, he didn't.
I think with I think it was just a lot of Australians didn't like David Warner, and
Which,
me included.
Who was it? Who was it? Because I can't remember. I can't remember who it was. But basically, there was this whole hoo-ha about David Warner getting to pick and choose when he retires and stuff like that. So one former Australian player just started shooting from the hip at Warner. I can't remember.
It was Mitch Johnson.
He
Mitch Johnson.
said some scathing
he
things, didn't he?
Yeah, he didn't like it at all, and it was lovely to read. Like,
Yeah, it was
because
great.
it was that kind of. It was lovely to watch a little bit of in-house fighting because you don't usually get that with the Aussies. They usually keep things in-house, but yeah, he definitely put a few boots in. I feel like I, from reading quite a lot, I definitely tried to stay on top of it while it was happening, and from reading, it feels like unless you're a friend of his, like you
You
didn't
don't
like
like
him
him.
in Australia. Like if you unless you knew him, and like there was things that Kawaja said, but Kawaja's wife said some lovely things about him, and it definitely feels like he's one of those people you either know him and you're in his circle and that's where you stay, or you just don't like him, and he's quite off-puttish with you, which
Yeah.
that's what it feels like from the outside. Anyway, I don't know if you'll know a little bit more than us, Josh, on that.
Yeah, I've never met him, but I think what does make me pause though, on the we always like the pub test, the good bloke test. I always thought he was a shit bloke, but when you see someone like Usman Khawaja, talk about him in such
Yeah,
high regard, I just go, I kind of pause, because I have met
yeah,
Usman Khawaja a number of times, and he's genuinely the world's nicest bloke. So yeah, I mean, oh, who knows? Who knows? I think it's
yeah,
kind of like
yeah. That's
Stuart Broad. I said this on the last pod. Like, Stuart Broad, I've hated him since forever, right? Always thought he was the world's shittest bloke. But then you listen to him like post career when he's not on the cricket field, and he actually seems like an alright guy. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's kind of like, you're probably actually
do,
alright.
do you know what I don't know if any of you have seen, but Brody actually brought a book out for about last summer's Ashes, called Broadly Speaking. And I'm almost all the way through it, and it's so fascinating to hear his his version of stuff that went on, and obviously you you Aussies absolutely keep bringing the fact that he didn't walk up, and that makes him a shit bloke and stuff like that. But Stuart Broad, like, he says some really good things, and I tell you boys, it's a really good book, and he talks a little bit about the past, but it was mainly on last summer's Ashes. Um, and he turns around and he says, like, especially when he went over to Australia, that one of the things that he didn't understand straight away until a couple of tours over there, until someone said it to him, was if if they're booing you, if they're giving you shit, um, even in the street in Stuart's case, um,
Mm.
it's because they're scared of you. It's because they think you're that competitor. It's they think that you can cause damage. If they're not giving you shit, then it's because they're not scared of you. And I've never thought about it like that before, until I read it, and I was like, well, yeah, because you were like just like we are of Steve Smith. It's why we sang you crying, we saw you crying on the telly. It's because we can try and get in his head, because otherwise he's going to rip you to shreds. So
Yeah,
read it. It's a good book, but it's that's one of the things that stuck with me. After reading it was, if they're not getting into you, it's because they're not bothered about you. If they're getting into you, it's because you're making them feel like they need
you're
to,
right.
which is good.
Yeah, no, fair
So
comment. I mean, I'd actually be interested to read that book because it goes back to like the spirit of cricket thing, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, boys. Like, we spoke about the Bairstow incident at length, and how how we thought it was against the spirit of cricket. Where do you stand on walking and not walking? And I guess there's a
Um,
there was a couple of times in this series where Zach Crawley, I remember he nicked off.
greatest opening
Umpire gave
batsman.
it. Umpire gave it not out. Absolutely hit his thumb. I don't know if you guys remember. I think it was in the first or the second test. It like
Yeah, I
absolutely
think I
smashed his
remember it.
thumb. So there's no way he didn't feel it, because I understand sometimes you don't feel when you nick it. I get that, but this smashed his thumb. He didn't walk, and then the Aussies reviewed it, and he got given out. And to me, like that's against the spirit of cricket, personally. But I know to some
I'll
people it
I'll
isn't.
I'll let Isaac have an answer
I was gonna
because
say. I feel like me and Steve are about to have very different answers with this, but I'll chime in with where I believe that it's at. When it comes to stuff like the spirit of cricket is a really weird concept to me, to be honest with you, because I've never watched a sport where it's not just about winning. So if a referee doesn't catch something, or like an umpire doesn't catch something, then then you are still in. I don't see why any competitor would admit to something like, if I'm, for example, let's just change sport for a second. If I'm watching a football game, and let's just say one of our defenders or something like that handballs the ball and then just puts his hand up to the ref and goes, "No, sorry, mate, I've just handballed that. Do us a favor and just blow for that if that's all right, mate." I just don't get it. So I'm all for like sportsmanship and stuff like that. Like, but at the end of the day, I would kind of be annoyed if you've not at least given yourself the opportunity to stay in, because ultimately, I do believe that it's about winning more than being nice, if that makes sense. And that's not just both ways, by the way. That's not just our way, by the way. I think if the same thing had happened, sort of like on the Australian camp, for example, and something was absolutely blatant, wear out reviews and stuff like that, I'd be like, you know what, fair play, because that's what it is. If the umpire's there and he's not giving it, ultimately, some things may be a little bit grubby, but you've got to respect the umpire's decision. It's annoying and terrible, and I will absolutely go back on those words when something goes wrong for us. But if it was my team, I'd be like, yeah, stay in, stand there, just eye down the umpire now, and just say, like, you're still in. Walk down the crease, sort out the pitch. Do you know what I mean? It's just like that's
No,
where I'm at
hang
with
on,
it.
hang on. The English have got to stay in their crease, mate.
Well, when the
Oh,
ball's dead,
right.
when the ball's dead. You happy with that?
Oh,
You happy with that, are you?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, very.
Very.
Um, right. So I have slightly differing opinions on one, the Bairstow incident, because I still don't see how Johnny was, because, and I'm going to go back to Stuart's book actually, because he sums it up quite nicely, because there was a few instances recently, and even in the same test match, Bairstow throws the ball while, God, I can't remember his name. I can't remember who was batting. But someone was batting for Australia, and he was trying to gain. He hits the ball, misses the ball, and he's already walking outside. He's already outside the crease. Um, Whereas the Bairstow incident happened, Bairstow was never out of his crease until he thought the ball was dead, and that's different, and that's why I didn't like that incident. When it comes
with
to nicking off and you knowing that you've nicked the ball off, I think I understand what Stuart says about the incident and in Australia where he nicks off. It's very, very clear that he nicks off. He turns around and goes, It's not my decision to make. It's the umpire's decision to make, and why would I just?" And I think he talks about in his book as well that supposedly a series before or something happened, and the Aussie didn't walk. Um, but I'm old fashioned. I think if you know you've hit that ball, just come on, man, be a gentleman. It's
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's a gentleman's sport, and I've had it done to me when I used to play amateur cricket. Like I was, fair enough. I was in my younger days, I was half decent swing bowler, and the guy edges it to second slip, and I didn't. I was kind of doing one of a celeb appeal. Like I was like, come on, like,
Yeah, mate.
and the umpire doesn't give it. The batsman doesn't walk, and I was like, I know I'm swinging it, but I'm not swinging it that much. Come on, and I just think if you know you've hit it, I personally think if you've got doubt, I understand staying there. But if you know you've hit it and you've nicked off, just do the thing and walk off. That's the whole. It's one of the whole platforms that cricket is based on. And those that yes, the lines can be blurred sometimes, i.e. the best of moment, but there's times if you nick it and you bloody know it, just tuck it under, walk off, come on. That's what I
Yeah,
feel like anyway.
and I don't I don't sort of disagree with you, Steve. I think the only thing for me with the Bairstow incident though, and this is the only thing I will say on it, is when he sort of scratches and he thinks the ball's dead and he starts walking forward, the ball's already left Alex Carey's hand. So
Yeah,
I
it
don't
has.
like the whole thing. I don't understand is like why I don't understand why the Australians are getting blamed for it when the ball had already left his hand and had Johnny been paying attention, um, he wouldn't have been out.
So
He would have.
Yeah.
I'll let you know what Stuart says in the book as you've not read it. So Stuart turns round, and the whole reason why it gets under the everyone's skin as much as it did was because of that whole he wasn't gaining an advantage. If you're throwing at the stumps when people are trying to gain an advantage, that's fair enough. But what they didn't like I said before, like, and I've watched it and I've rewatched it after I read the book. Like he doesn't try and gain an advantage. He doesn't like. Yes, he did it a couple of balls before, but that's because he thought the ball was dead again. Like he's not trying to gain an advantage in any way, shape, or form. I kind of feel like it's slightly like a man card. Like if everyone backs up, everyone backs up. If someone's backing up far too much, then yeah, give them a warning. And if they still carry on backing up far too much and they're for a quarter of the way down the pitch, then it's their own bloody fault. Whereas,
But the only thing about that those stays, it went in the scorebook as a stumping. So it, what you're saying, I understand what you're saying about not gaining an advantage. But the problem I've got with that is, if a keeper stumps someone, just because they're up to the stumps, behind the stumps, it doesn't matter, right? But if someone stumps you off a spin bowl and your back foot just pops up for a split second and you get stumped, you're not trying to gain an advantage
Yeah.
by taking a run, but you're still out.
no, but that's you're in the motion of playing a shot. You're in and you've not been able to control your body enough to stay behind the line. That's different to the ball. The ball's gone through to the keeper. He's not tried to play a shot. He's not tried to sneak a run. He's had time to scratch his foot and make it quite clear that, and he's going to have a chat with his mate. Like,
Yeah,
there's
but,
there's
but
there,
by this
there's a big
point,
difference between stumping and what happened.
well, I disagree, and the only reason I disagree is because you talk about him scratching his foot and walking forward, and ball had left Kerry's hand by then.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's one of those things where like I don't think Carey's actually done anything wrong, and I think the kind of thing which is like blown it out of proportion is the setting. Like I feel like because it's the Ashes and it's obviously kind of controversial just the way it is because obviously as we say he thinks the ball's dead and stuff like that. But once Alex Carey's not thinking about that, he's caught the ball and he's thrown it and it's hit the stumps. He's not
Boys,
he's not actually done anything wrong. It's just
I'm
obviously
not saying he's done something wrong.
no. I'm not saying
saying
you
he's
are,
done
but
something
obviously
wrong.
it's been blown up to the
But
nines as if he's basically just gone and shot him. Well, it was
no, the different. I think we said this when we did the first pod. That my whole thing is carrying on the appeal. What Carey did is brilliant, utterly brilliant. He's noticed that something's happened, but again, it's kind of like a man cad. Give someone a warning. You're walking out your crease before the ball's dead, mate. Do it again, and we're gonna throw it. We're gonna throw stumps down at you.
yeah.
That's what the kind of gentleman rules of a man cad is. You give someone a warning. You turn around and go, "Hey, you're coming out your crease too much for my liking. Do it
Yeah,
again, and I'm going to take the bails."
thinking about
Where
the
there was no
sorry.
warning or anything like that. So what my whole thing is when that replay, and he had time, they had time to do it. The Australian senior players, your Steve Smith, your Pat Cummins, obviously as captain, could have had a look at it and gone, right, boys, are we doing the right thing in this moment? Because at the end of the day, that's what people want and feel that cricket is different to other sports because we do have that code of it's a gentleman's game. It's moral. You have that moral victory every now and again, and it's one of those. I know that people take the piss out of English fans for thinking they've had that moral win and stuff like that. No, it's not about that. It's about the fact of is is taking that wicket in that way the right thing to do with no warning, no hold on a second, you're doing something that we're not liking. Remember that there's rules here, Jonathan. There was nothing of that. So did Carey do something wrong? No. Was the appeal wrong? No. But then as soon as they've seen it and thought about it for a second, should it have been upheld as an appeal? Me personally, and obviously I know you two think differently, but me personally, I
Yeah.
think it should. Pat Cummins should have gone. Hold on a second, let me take a breath.
Well, just to sort of like put a pin in that just to put a sort of like put a rounding on that because we have been talking about that for quite some time at this point. We are coming
Too
towards,
long.
we are coming towards the verging on the territory of repeating the first podcast. But yeah, we said we're going for an hour. We've got about 20 minutes left. Obviously, give or take some some extra time. So
Can I wrap it up?
yeah, I was
And
going to
just like
say,
put a pin in that whole thing.
yeah, go for it. That's what I was gonna suggest.
Bold green, stumped Carey, 2-2. Fuck off.
Nice, I like it. So moving on from the
Right.
Ashes wrap up, I feel like we've got a choice of things now, boys, because we could genuinely go through this agenda in about 6 hours. But has anyone got any preferences of what we move on to next, boys?
Should we go World Cup? Let's get the World Cup because
I'd prefer it if we
even
didn't.
though
To be honest with you, I'd prefer it if we didn't.
no, there's
Oh.
some very very good things to happen from this World Cup. The first thing is the fact that I think the right team won.
Yeah.
I think the right team won in the end, even though India played very, very well. Yeah, we'll talk about some issues with that later on. But the right team won. My whole issue with the whole thing was, is it the right format to continue going forward? And I think no. I think
Really?
some of those matches were brilliant. I think, but to take I think they said it. So in the time that it took us to do the Cricket World Cup, they could have had I think a Football World Cup and an Olympics in the same time.
Yeah, but what I will say is, I'm a fan of 50 overs. More so, my controversial cricket opinion is 50 overs is better than T20. Just because you get time to like, it sounds really weird, but you get time to breathe into a game. Do you know what I mean? You get time to sort of like get
Yep.
some real skill on show, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that T20s. I'm never suggesting that T20 is not skillful in the slightest, but I feel like you get more chance to kind of go to war, if that makes sense. Like you get more drawn out battles. You just obviously the higher scoring as well and stuff like that. And obviously when a team does get skittled, it's like, oh my god, they've absolutely mullered them in like 30 overs. You've got 20 overs remaining. You've absolutely made a pig's ear of it and stuff like that. I just feel like there's more. I feel like there's more to it, and I actually really do think moving forward, like they should really try and push that as a format because I do think it is good. The only problem I had with this World Cup, other than England deciding to just not show up, was honestly, I think we had a discussion about it on the time in our little chat, but the crowds were absolutely appalling. Like you have all these like massive stadiums and stuff like that. Which is great, by the way. I'm not suggesting that we just need to do it in sort of like smaller stadiums. Obviously, we need it to be in these massive stadiums to get the spectacle. But if you're gonna have like these massive stadiums with like, let's just say you've got a 50,000 seat stadium with like 12,000 in, it's a terrible advert for the game. I think they just really need to advertise it better because the cricket's solid. It's just obviously, it's just not the in thing anymore.
I I have a few points on some of the points you've made. So, is 50 over. I agree with you. I think 50 over is sometimes better than 220. I think they've both got a place in the game.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, and when I say format, I don't mean taking away the one day World Cup at all. I don't mean it at all. But I mean, why not have 2 games a day? Why are teams sometimes having a week or 10-day turnaround before
Yeah.
the next game? Like, and your point of is was the stadium and then the crowd's not good enough. Well, it's probably because they've a lot of people have got enough time to go to as many of the bigger games as possible. Whereas if there's not enough time in between to travel and stuff like that, people are going to want to watch any cricket,
Mm.
especially a Cricket World Cup. So the other games, I think the New Zealand England game that started it off, the crowd was terrible.
Yeah.
What's that about? You want to get everyone in, but
You've got to have the
I
host
don't.
first.
Well, I would have expected that as well. But I just think if if one days are not going to be in the trouble that we thought Test cricket was maybe 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where people were really scared for Test cricket. I think one days are almost in that point now because of, and especially after the World Cup, I think patience and interest waned because 48 games over what the 5th of October to the 19th of November, I think the final was. That's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. And I just think, even though some of the cricket was outstanding, I think, especially in India, which is a really tough place to play cricket, um, I just think it needs to have a bit of a shake up.
Yeah, so I'm looking at some numbers here. It was an average of 26,000 per match.
Yeah,
Now that's a little bit skewed because obviously we know that all of the Indian games
it
were
was sold out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Filled to the
massive
rafters.
crowds, and then the rest of them were pretty quiet. And I feel like that's relatively similar pretty much wherever you go. I remember the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, which I think was 2015, I want to say. Um, that World Cup, I remember going to a couple of games here at Canberra. A couple of the sort of the minnow teams. I remember. I think it might have been like Ireland and South Africa or something like that. Um, in Canberra's, we don't get that much live sport here. So when we do, it's usually packed. But because it was Ireland versus South Africa, it was pretty dead. There was only sort of like 10,000 people at the game. So, yeah. But in terms of a
it was
World
held
Cup,
over the same format though, wasn't it? It was spread out again, wasn't it?
yeah, and I think you're right. I think we need to have a pool system, similar to the football and rugby World Cup.
Yeah,
I'd like to see a pool system instead of
Definitely.
you know like a round robin where you play everyone once. Um, but I mean, looking at looking at the tournament itself, though, it was quite, from an Australian point of view, it was quite poetic in a lot of ways. Like the way that it all unfolded. We lost to India and South Africa in our first 2 games, and we thought, shit, this is going to be a really tough tournament. We're going to have to win just about every game, knowing we still had England to play, and before we knew England's form was going to fall off a cliff, and we had New Zealand to go, and so we thought, fuck, we're in big trouble here.
Yeah.
And then we just came out and we just didn't look like losing. It got halfway through that third game against Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankans were off to a flying start. They were none for 100 odd.
And then Australia just kind of bossed it, didn't they?
Just ripped through the Sri Lankans. We got away with that win, and then we just kept going and going. And our batsmen really stood up to, and all of them. Like David Warner got a couple of big hundreds. Travis Head got obviously he
oh,
got some hundreds.
unbelievable he played. Yeah,
And and then
Uh,
Mitch Marsh, a couple of big hundreds, and then Glenn Maxwell. Like what a freak! Um, there's no other way to describe him, honestly.
no, there's not.
I think if we just talk about that Afghanistan game for a second, You know, to have a partnership with
Sure.
Maxwell into that partnership to be 200 not out is pretty outrageous.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of times that certain players stood up. It wasn't the same player every single time. It was certain players just stood up, and it just um seemed like you were all ready to do it. I think, what was it, 201 off 128 balls, 21 fours, 10 sixes, strike rate of 157. Like, that's nutty. Like,
We, we were chasing 292.
yeah.
And it was 7 for 91 at one point.
I was just about to say, I think if he'd have gone, I think that it would possibly been your World, because that would that have done World Cup? Would that have been your World Cup over? I think.
No, we well, provided that we won our other games, we would have gone through. But yeah, we only lost our first two, so we would have been okay. But
yeah, would have been a blow.
Yeah,
I think it could have knocked you. Could have knocked you.
Yeah, it could have for sure. But yeah, just the way that he played and with the cramp as well, like some of those shots and
Oh God, yeah.
He was literally just on his haunches at one point, wasn't he? When he was at the non-striker's end, he was just leaning on his back because he couldn't do anything else. It was ridiculous. But no, I actually think you should have won it. I think the Aussie team, just like I said, I think different players stood up at different times. I think we all know that India is a bad place to go and visit.
Yeah, and I think that's what made me super proud, was like it was, everyone had an input in that World Cup. The guys at times that stood up when the team needed them to stand up, and I think what was the most poetic thing, and I am fishing now, was against. I thought that was going to be a really tough game. Australia came
It
out
wasn't.
made close to 300. I think it was like 290 something.
286, yeah.
286, yeah. So decent score, and I thought, this will probably be a chase that England will get, because England loves playing against Australia. And then first ball of the innings, Johnny Bairstow, fuck off. Talk about poetry. That's like the Ashes decider right there.
That was sweeter than some of the other stuff that you had. No, I think your tournament was literally the polar opposite of what our tournament was, where not really anyone stood up for us. Maybe our bowlers did okay compared to our batsmen. Our batsmen really let us down, I personally think, in the World Cup. But no, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed a lot of the actual games. I just didn't enjoy waiting every day. I think, like I say, two games a day. I think you're right. I think some sort of round robin, group stage, like the Football World Cup and stuff like that, would do better.
I was going to say, I feel like that adds a bit more suspense as well, because you're not just like your big games are in the knockout stages, then, aren't they? Instead of just having well, obviously you can look forward to stuff like exactly, yeah. Like, for example, if like Pakistan are playing India, which is an absolutely gargantuan game in the world, like obviously just the world. You've already seen it in the tournament, whereas that could be like a semi-final or a final potentially, and it's like it's got an added element to it. I feel like that would kind of advertise it more, because it's like, oh God, this is huge. This is happening once.
I think not just that as well. I think it gives the minnows, like they can put their all into that group stage to try and get out of that group stage.
Yeah.
Whereas with the, by the way, boys, you've got 12 matches that you need to try and like pull your finger out for every single one, and try and pull off a shock in every single one. Whereas if you've got 4 groups of 4 or whatever, then they've probably got more of a chance than the current format to spring a shock. So yeah, I hope they look at it in a different way for the next one. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think.
Yeah. With the sorry to maybe sort of like hurry this along a little bit, boys, but we've we're coming towards the hour pretty quickly. Has anyone got
Keep
any
going. Let's keep going.
anyone got any
Yeah.
further points on the World Cup that they want to make before we move on to the next thing?
No,
Yeah,
I'll
we
sum it
won.
up as
We
Josh.
won.
Oh yeah,
I'll
Australia
sum
won.
it up.
Australia
I'll,
won. Yeah,
I'll,
yeah.
I'll sum it up as Josh summed up the Aussies. So well done, the Aussies. And that's about it. Yeah.
Yep, top draw, mate. You won. Yep, you did. Yep. One
Thanks for that.
I hope we don't mind if I skip to this, but generally this has kind of come up in the World Cup chat a little bit, so I kind of want to bring this up now if that's all right. But this is a direct quote from our very own Josh. So this is we were talking about basically. I'll give you the context. We were talking about England versus India, and I basically woke up in the morning and saw that England were like 6 down or something. I can't remember the exact figures. But basically we were 6 down like quite quickly or something like that. And I just put India play well in India. Who'd have thought it? And Josh came back with a lovely little quote which says, "Every home team doctors their wickets. One of the worst things about cricket." And I would like Josh to discuss that if that's okay.
Josh with the opening line.
It's actually one of my biggest bugbears about cricket, and every team does it. Australia does it, England does it, India does it, and basically what the curators do is they'll create a pitch that will suit the home team more like in like I think the most unfair way possible. So if you come to Australia, you can expect the wickets to be extra fast, extra bouncy, and be seaming all over the place. But there's typically not that much swing. There's not that much spin, except later on in the test. And visiting batsmen, they just can't deal with the pace and the bounce. Now, when you watch a Shield game, are they that fast and bouncy? Fuck no. And that's the thing that bothers me is when England and India come out here, we create these pitches that are just absolutely rapid to try and gain an advantage because we're used to pace and bounce. Same in India, they make absolute dust bowls that are turning square from fucking day one. You've got Ravi Ashwin opening the bowling in a test match, like that's a stitch up. And same sort of thing. They just make these on those clay-based red soils. They make these absolute dust bowls to give India an advantage because they're better players to spin. And in England, it's the same thing. It's you see low, slow green monsters typically. I think with Bazball in the last series, I think you went away from that a little bit. And I think you actually kind of played into Australia's hands a little bit. You made a little bit flatter wickets than you normally do, and the ball didn't move around as much. And I think it was because obviously you wanted to play your Bazball style, which that's fine. But I think that played in the Australians' hands a little bit. Typically, when Australia goes to England, they struggle with the swing, and on those those juicy green wickets, traditionally visiting teams have always struggled in England. So. But I just think it's wrong. I think what curators should be doing is creating a fair wicket that's a good contest between bat and ball. Obviously, every location is going to have their certain characteristics, but I don't think we need to go extra like we're doing at the moment. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, boys?
I kind of chalked it down to my thoughts beforehand were, which I don't know how. Obviously, I don't know how true this is or not. I just kind of thought that the wickets are prepared, and the whole sort of like a contest is prepared, sort of like in like a country, depending on how sort of like the grassroots game is played. So, for example, like the Indian game, let's just put it for example, because that's famously just spin, 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 and then you've got it's spin heavy, isn't it? Let's be honest. But obviously that's kind of like how all of their pitches around the country would kind of be. So I thought it was only natural that sort of like their national pitches and stuff like that would also be the same. I didn't actually realize that a lot. Obviously, I knew there's like groundsmen and stuff like that who obviously set the pitches up and stuff like that. But I always thought that's just kind of like how it was because that's just how it's played over there. If that makes sense. I didn't realize obviously there was like a big sort of like strategic like thing to it. I thought it's just like we're going to India, so we're gonna bring all the spinners, and just because that's how it is over there, because that's just literally how like you know what I mean? Like that's literally how it is. Or like, for example, Australia, it's flat and hard because it's very, in a lot of places it's kind of dry, hot, it just kind of makes sense. And obviously we get a lot of rain, so maybe that's why it's green monsters and stuff like that. I just kind of thought it was like local conditions. I didn't really know too much about it, sort of like in that sense. So I've kind of not really got like I've kind of maybe not got like such a strong stance of it, not to use your words, but I wouldn't, in my head, it's not one of the worst things about cricket, but I can absolutely see why that is I can see why you take that stance, because ultimately, at the end of the day, you are basically giving yourself sort of like 3 steps ahead in every game, just because you are just creating your perfect conditions, which I'm all for creating your perfect conditions, but if it's like a completely different style of game in one place to another, then I can see why it would really be sort of like a massive frustration.
Yeah.
My thing on that though is it's not a natural way in that country. So if you go around India, you can see it in the IPL. It's not always spinning pitches. That's the thing that gets me. It only seems to be when the test team play in India that they turn it into turning pitches.
And
And
you're spot on, Steve.
that
Yeah.
yeah, and that blows my mind, because if you look at what it's like, I suppose I won't know what it's like in the Shield compared to when Australia played, but if I'm honest, if you come over to county cricket, the what you get in an Ashes series is usually not far from what you get in county cricket. You don't get fast-paced pitches. You do get swinging. If you're a swinger um in England, you're probably gonna be okay. Whereas I would say India is probably the worst place I've seen it over the years, is when they change that, and it's not.
Right.
I I would say that getting an advantage because it's slightly in your favour isn't too bad, but when you are making it 5 steps ahead of the other team, and what if players come over to Australia, they will kind of get used to those conditions. If people went over to India, they would play on pitches that wouldn't give them the same conditions that we're seeing in Hyderabad at the moment. Like who who like turns a ball like they did on day one? So if you've not, for some reason, if you've not kept up with it on day one, like it was turning ridiculously amounts. Thankfully yesterday, and why England have got back into this test, is because the pitch has calmed down. Like the only reason we lost some wickets yesterday was because um, it was reverse swinging. And God, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. He the seamer. Oh bloody hell, what's his name, boys? Bumrah. Bumrah did a spell of unbelievable reverse swing bowling. That's the reason why we lost as many wickets as we did yesterday. Um, But other than that, why would you go to, like, because you can go all the way around the world. West Indies is technically usually a place where you'd find spin, but you don't turn up in West Indies and it's spinning like crazy on day one. You have those periods in the game, but whenever I see a test, especially in the last 5 years in India, whether it was Australia late last year or us now, and this is test 1 out of 5. It's just not what you want to see. It's
Mm.
crazy. But
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head there when you compared it to the IPL. You look at the IPL; they're playing at the same grounds, but they're creating absolute roads because they
yeah,
want high-scoring, entertaining T20 games.
Hmm.
Then as soon as it's a test match, you're right. They're going out of their way to create an advantage for the home team. I just think it's one of the worst things in cricket. In my opinion, it's blatant cheating. I hate it. I hate it when we do it as well. We did it last year to South Africa. We went up to the Gabba.
yeah,
It was
I
an
remember that.
absolute
Oh,
green monster. The Gabba's a fast wicket anyway, and we bowled them out for like 40 something. And it
yeah,
looked dangerous.
I was just about to say I remember that test match, and I was worried at how those balls were coming, and especially for people that aren't used to it.
Absolutely ridiculous in my opinion, but that's the way that it goes, and everyone does it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that everyone does it and no one's going to change it, but
No.
it's an annoying thing.
I think there should be a limit, though. I think there should be an ICC standard that turns around and goes, yes, we understand home advantage, and that's the whole point of having a home tour, is that you do get that advantage. And I still think there should be a thing of if your country is not usually opening with spinners, yet your test team are, it shouldn't be like that. It should. I think that's why we lost. I'm sure we lost the West Indies tour, or drew it. I can't quite remember now. But the whole point of why that was such a gripping tour was because Yassima's had a go, and later on in days, end of day 3, definitely day 4 and day 5, the softness of the pitch came through, and the spin started to come through, or Yassima's were able to put to get grip off the surface and do cutters and whatnot. I actually read a fact this morning. Bumrah, who is quite possibly one of the best fast bowlers, and has been for the last 2 or 3 years, I would say. This is only his 4th home test.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, that's nutty to me. How can one of your premium bowlers not get picked for all those tests that you
That is actually a crazy start. That would you say
you
that?
not
Go on.
go? No, go.
Sorry, just before it leaves my head, would you say that it's kind of like completely ruining the ability? For example, in cricket, obviously we know sort of like traditionally that the spin sort of like gets brought out towards, obviously in spells once the pitch has been worked. Do you think it's completely ruining the aspect of the game where you have to kind of work with the pitch? Because obviously traditionally you get like, I'm not been in this game for very long, but like opening with spinners is absolutely like it sounds bizarre considering, because normally when I'm thinking of spinning conditions, you're thinking sort of like there's the stuff for the for the ball to actually latch onto, like where the seamers have been sort of like hitting the pitch hard and really sort of like giving the pitch a good drubbing. Like I feel like that is part of the game, which if you have the ability to, for example, with anything, with any sort of bowling, if you are completely changing your pit, like completely changing your wicket to just sort of like do it straight from the get go, it's kind of like, I don't know how to word this, but it's kind of like eliminating that side of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the whole point of Test cricket is, and this is why I'm sure you've had it in the past when you've talked to people that don't really understand cricket or don't watch cricket. Is like Amy will watch a T20 with me, and she loves it. Like she always comes around when it's Big Bash season, and she's like, right, it's a Big Bash,
KFC
and this is
bucket hat.
yeah, she wants a KFC bucket out. She wants to come over. She wants to go and watch a game, and that's good for the game. But when I turn around to her and go, the Ashes are on over, and it's 5-day tests, she's like, fuck off, I'm not watching it. Like,
Yeah.
but for someone that watches cricket, you watch those 5 days because you know that it's going to ebb and flow, and you want it to last at least three going into the 4th day, because you want a little back and forth. You want one team to be on top and then the bowlers to be on top, and right now is to
Little technical
be
difficulties on
good.
my
And
end, sorry.
there's so many reasons why Nathan Lyon is such a good cricketer, but one of the main reasons is because he knows, and the Australian team know, that it should be the seamers up first to make that wicket soft, get those grooves in, and Nathan Lyon goes and does his work. If if you look at the England team, we've got one like fast bowler, we've got four spinners. England don't have more than, like, Tom Hartley's playing his debut in India. Like Rehan Ahmed is his second test. Like that's what we're being forced to play. You're not getting or in my mind, you're not getting a fair bracket going over and beating that team if you've got to change your makeup of the team that dramatically.
No, I feel it. I'm with it.
Mm.
Josh, do you have anything on there or?
Well, I was just gonna say, I know we're gonna chat about Bazball, and while we're on the India topic, I've got a bit of a spicy take on this one. I think Bazball's gonna work in India.
Yeah,
I do.
I don't think that's controversial.
Yeah,
I think it is controversial. I disagree with you. I think it is controversial, and I think yesterday was the first time I thought, and I was confident in it. And I'll let Josh finish and say why first before I put my oar in.
I just think I think in India you get a lot of balls that a lot of people say this all the time. One of the balls is going to have your name on it, and I think if you're being aggressive and scoring runs, if you can score runs, if you can score 70 runs off 100 balls, that's going at a pretty good clip. Whereas if you look at what Australia or some of the Australian players did, so you look at guys like Marnus and Khawaja who like build their innings, for example. In India, if they face 100 balls, they'll be on like 30 runs, but one of those balls is going to get them out. Because it's just the nature of the pitches over there. One's going to spit, one's going to jag. It's going to turn absolutely sideways, and it's going to be absolutely unplayable. And they'll get out for 20, 30 odd. Even if they faced 100 balls and played pretty well. Whereas England, and you look at guys like Travis Head, Mitchell Marsh, and then a lot of the England lineup, the way that they play, you know, they're gonna score runs off those 100 odd balls. And I think that's where it's going to work for. Is I think you'll scrap and scrape together an innings that'll be pretty. I won't say scrappy, but like it'll be one of those ones where you're trying to score quickly, but it'll also be your undoing. But I think you'll have enough runs on the board that it's going to put India under a lot of pressure. And at the end of the day, India's got to bat on those decks too. And I just think where India's batting is at the moment, I think you're in with a bit of a shout. Like this Indian team's not as strong as it has been in the past.
No.
No Virat Kohli.
Which
in
is
this
beautiful
test.
to see.
Yeah, which don't get me wrong, they got some class players. Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, absolute guns. KL Rahul, Shreyas Iyer, they're all good players, but yeah, as I said, this team's nowhere near as good as it has been in the past. So I think
I'd,
you're in with a bit of a shout. And if you look at the scores now as well, like Ollie Pope, what an innings, 148.
oh,
And
what a
that's
man.
a guy. That's a guy I've never really rated, but like watching some of the highlights, I didn't watch the whole innings, but watching some of the highlights, geez, he's played well.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw some stats in for you. So, we obviously last time I went down there, we lost 4-1. And our 246 in the first innings of this test match beat every one of those scores bar two, I think, because that's how poorly we played. And I think that first innings we didn't play well at all, except for Stokes. Stokes is, and I was saying this to Richard. He's not here with us again tonight because he's gone to a family thing. But we were talking, and Stokes he just understood when he needed to attack, and when he attacked, it was just brutal. And I think people at the start really misunderstood what the so-called Bazball's about, but it's starting to become a bit clear, and it's making momentum when you haven't got any and trying to keep that momentum rolling. It's not about just flailing the ball around the park. It's about getting on top of the team in certain situations, and that's what Stokes did, and that is exactly what Pope and Folks did yesterday. We lost a few wickets for not many runs after the openers. and to be honest, it wasn't Pope's innings that made me think we're going to be okay. It was the Crawley and Duckett partnership. We'd just been bowled out on day one, or just day one and day two, for 246. India finished 436 all out. We could have been gone by the end of the day, but they stood there and went, no, we're going to carry on playing the way that we are, and we're going to hit that bad ball, and it just felt different. It felt like, even though they amassed such a big total, which 436 is a massive total in any country, never mind in India, they still went out and were like, no, we're all right, we're okay. Hopefully we get a bit more of a lead, and we put the pressure on them. But that's what made it exciting for me, and that's where I think you're right, Josh. I think we will be okay in India.
Yeah, and I think you you're an outside chance of winning the series too. I think if you do win the series, I still think it'll be long odds.
Yeah.
But I think when I say I think Bazball's going to work in India, is I think you guys will play well.
Yeah.
Still, I would tip India to win the series, but I think it'll be a close series. I think it'll be much the same as the Australian series in India last year, which ended up 2-1. And Australia was, again, similar to the Ashes series. We were this close to winning that series. So, and I think it'll be much the same. England v India.
Just not close enough though for a win.
I need to clarify, by the way, when I said I don't think that's controversial. I just need to make everybody aware I have nothing to back that up. I just have blind faith in our boys.
And I love this. And I've, obviously, Josh, unfortunately you're over it as well. I say unfortunately, unfortunate for us, but obviously definitely not unfortunate for you. But I've got the absolute pleasure, and obviously our chat is going most days with what we talk about and stuff like that. But I have the utmost privilege of watching Izaak just growing more and more into a fan of the game, and your unwavering support of England is just unbelievable to watch.
Yeah,
Because
genuinely, it's
I've
the
been
only sport where I'm not a nervous wreck about.
yeah, and I don't understand how well, I do, because you've grown up in this beautiful period where we've been okay, where I've had to go through the ups and downs, it's yeah, it's
You had,
nice to watch. But
you had to live through the 90s.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
I've seen some like good YouTube videos, and like Sky does some good documentaries about sort of like test series from back in the day. God, it looked bleak. God, it looked bleak.
Bleak isn't even the word. And
Yeah.
Josh has been so fortunate to watch an Aussie team that has barely had a down hilt. Hopefully it'll come soon when all these great players retire.
Well,
But
the only one that I remember was that sort of 2010, like sort of that turn of the like when all those
yeah,
players retired, like Hayden,
I
Langer,
was just about to say,
Moore.
when they retired.
When all those guys retired, that was the only period where Australia was shit, and it was for a period of about 2 years, because then they started to find players that came into their own, like obviously Steve Smiths and the current era we've got, like those guys all came on the scene in 2011. But that
Yeah.
Ashes series where the Ashes series you guys won in Australia, and tell me if you've heard of any of these players, Isaac.
Okay.
Have you heard of Peter Siddle?
Yes.
He was our spearhead.
Oh. Oh.
I
Yeah,
love that reaction.
hang
Well,
on.
I know of him, but
You
only
bring
because
it.
he's
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If he didn't say our players, I genuinely couldn't have told you what country Peter Siddle was from. I've heard of him.
Have you ever heard of Doug Bollinger?
No.
Me neither. Have you ever heard of Ben Hilfenhaus?
No, but a great name.
Me neither. Have you ever heard of Xavier Doherty?
No.
Neither have I. That was our bowling attack when you guys won the Ashes in Australia.
Good team, solid team. Australia's finest.
Garbage.
No, right. Just to give you a little bit of a context. Obviously, they'd literally just been and hold on a second, Mitch Johnson as well.
He was injured. So was Ryan Harris.
Who were they?
Are you sure?
Positive.
Get it
Mitch
up.
Johnson played. Mitch Johnson played, but he was busted.
Was he? Ah, well, if he played, and it was fine.
He's
I'm
in.
just going through it here. So Ricky Ponting was still captain, Michael Clark vice
Also
captain,
busted.
and then I remember some of these players, and as a English cricket fan, it was beautiful to watch. So Michael Bay wasn't he a spinner?
Yeah, I've played against him.
Oh yeah.
He's a spinner.
Doug Bollinger was just a big bloke who just tried to run in and put the ball into the pitch as hard as he could. Xavier Doherty, I can't really remember him too much. Brad Haddin was still your wicket keeper. Ryan Harris, he did his best. Ben Hilfenhaus, I think his career was started and ended in those Ashes.
Shit,
Philip Hughes, he obviously played in them. And if things were better, he'd have probably been in your team for a long time. Michael Hussey was probably coming to the end of his decent era. Mitch Johnson, yeah. Simon Cattage, have you even heard of him, Isaac?
Nope. No idea.
he was
Marcus
good.
North.
We don't mind Cat. He was a good player.
I was just about to say Simon Cattage was a decent player. Khawaja obviously started
Was he?
in those
Yeah, that was his
Ashes.
first series. Yeah.
Yeah. Marcus North was a batter.
Garbage.
And Shane Watson. Shane Watson was there as well.
Oh, fuck.
Surely you've heard of Shane Watson, Isaac.
Nope.
He was garbage.
No
Oh.
idea. Sugar Shane Watson, are we gonna call him now?
No, Shane Watson was. He wasn't garbage. He was
He was
a
all-rounder,
bloke.
but he's
Yeah,
not
he
a
was a
top
good all
batter.
rounder. No, of
Not a
course
top.
he wasn't. He was
Yeah.
he was
Yeah,
decent.
average.
It's and
Average
that
55.
proves
He's good enough.
that proves how because if you watch that, Isaac, that'd have got you in because we won that, and it was the first time we'd won a Ashes series down under for a hell of a long time, since the 80s, I think, if I remember rightly, or was it the 90s, early 90s possibly? I can't remember.
It was a long
Um,
time.
Yeah, I think the last Ashes series you guys won in Australia would have been the 80s.
Yeah, I think with Broad Senior possibly, if I remember rightly.
Yeah,
I'm just
maybe.
trying to find it up
Probably
now.
would have been. It would have been in the. Just trying to think who would have been there for Australia. Would have been in like the Allen Border era before they were good.
I was just I'm trying to
Before they
think.
got good. Maybe like Mark Taylor, all those sorts of guys. You guys would have had all your typical 80s guys like Gat. Beefy
Yeah.
been around there?
Beefy would have been around, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
so it would
sure.
have been like
Sure.
Gat, Beefy, David Gower, all those sorts of guys.
Yeah, I'm sure Brody Senior was there as well. I think I'm not sure. But you've got the West Indies at the moment, haven't
86, 87 was when we last won it in Australia. Before
you? 86 before
Yeah.
the 2010.
England and Australia, it was a 2-1 win.
It was a long time between innings. let's put it that way.
I think
Right.
that series in 10-11, I think what a lot of people don't realise as well is a lot of our players who were playing were actually like busted as well. Like Ricky Ponting had a broken hand the entire series, and when we'd lost the series, he didn't play in the fifth test to go and have surgery. So it's one of those things, you know. Like it was a kind of a perfect storm of we were very shit at the time, and England was incredibly good. So if you look at I'm not even looking at the teams, right? And I could pretty much name the England 11, and it was fucking immaculate, right? You're talking Cook, Strauss, Bell, Peterson, Collingwood. Who else would have been there?
Yeah.
Pryor would have had the gloves shortly.
So I'll name them for you. So
Jimmy Anderson then, no?
Yeah. So you got Andrew Strauss. Tremlett, yeah, he was the big lad that went down. Graham Swan was obviously still the spinner. Kev Peterson, obviously. So the actual touring squad was Strauss, Cook, Anderson, Ian Bell, who was a brilliant all rounder, probably underappreciated. Tim Bresnan, who was decent.
Good
Uh,
player, good player.
yeah, Stuart Broad, Paul Collingwood, Stephen Davies, who was the backup wicketkeeper. We didn't use him. Stephen Finn, Owen Morgan, but I don't think he played much. Monty Panesar again, I don't think he played much.
Player.
Kevin Peterson, Ajmal Shazad, who was a decent seamer, but again, I don't think we used him too much. Matt Pryor was wicketkeeper. Graham Swan, Chris Tremlett, and Jonathan Trott, who at that time was one of the best batsmen in the world. Yeah. Brilliant squad. But
for sure.
no, I still don't think I know we're gonna have to wrap it up soon, and I'm my lasting note for this pod was Ashes 25-26. Bring it on, because it's gonna be so good. I think we've got quite a few tests over this year and into next year as a team, and I think that's just going to make us stronger. You kind of have your normal Aussie summer tests, don't you?
We don't have that many. We don't have any test matches in the middle of the year, so our next test match after these ones are in the next Australian summer. So
I was just about to say, so you
a little bit different for us, but we played a lot last year. That's why I think.
Yeah, we seem to go through a little bit of a
Lull.
lull, and then you kind of go through it. So you've got New Zealand. You've got New Zealand in February, a tour of New Zealand.
Yep.
Of that, yeah, only a couple of tests. And then obviously the World T20 comes in.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it for this year, which is a bit crazy for you.
Yeah.
Where I'm sure we've got quite a few.
That's why. But speaking of that Ashes series,
Yeah.
how do you think you boys will shape up?
I'll do my quick one and then I'll let Isaac answer. But I just don't see how we don't come over if we have more or less the same makeup of a squad with the same mentality and the same confidence and the same outlook on cricket as a whole, which is why we're doing well. I think, and the fact that the players that you've got might not be the ones that you used to, and you might have to bring in some players in between now and then that might not be used to that sort of atmosphere and stuff like that. I think we're probably going to be the best prepared we will have been since the 2010 Ashes, and I think we could. It'll be hard work, but I think we could finally win one again.
Well, I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because I don't know the state of England's grassroots cricket system, and I don't know who we're going to bring in for the next couple of years. But what I will say is, if we keep this team, keep on going the way we are, positive mental attitude, Baz Ball. All I'm saying, Josh, it's going to be 5-0 to England. Come on, the boys. It's written.
Oh, I'll write it
I
down.
will. Before Josh answers that, if we win 5-0 in Australia,
You're booking the flights.
I will pay for a flight to Australia and streak at one of Josh's club matches.
There it is. There it is. You heard it here. It's on record.
I was just about to say, it's all over the internet. It'll be there. So if we win 5-0 in those Ashes, I will pay for a flight. I'll have to pay for 2 because Amy won't let me go to Australia
You're
without.
You're gonna have to pay for 3 then, because I'm coming.
You can pay for your own.
No,
kit.
absolutely not. I've got you. I've
and
got you the win.
And I will streak at one of Josh's club matches right across
allegedly
Bradman Square.
Well, I don't want to rain on your parade, boys, but the last 3 series in Australia, it's 13-0.
Yep.
And we talk about Bazball.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I think it's actually going to work against you.
Okay.
So if we look at the ways that Australia's been beaten at home, in the last couple of series, they've lost at home. They've lost series against South Africa and India, the most recent series that they've lost at home. Both of those tours, those three tours, because India won twice in Australia. Those tours, you had batsmen batting for long periods of time, and they cooked our bowling attack. And what would happen is the bowling attack would be cooked. The opposition had put on 450, 500. Australia would come out. There'd be too much scoreboard pressure. Within it, they'd only bat for 70, 80 overs, and the bowlers would be back out bowling again. And by the end of the series, we'd gone through like tons of fast bowlers, because they were just bowling far too much. They were breaking down, getting injured, and basically our bowling attack fell apart. And it happened 3 times in a row. I think what a lot of people forget about Bazball, it's all well and good in places like England, but in somewhere like Australia where the conditions are very oppressive, you've got to bat time because you've got to give your bowlers a break. Bowling in Australia is very different to bowling in England, in terms of just not just what the pitch is doing, but weather-wise. Like the conditions, it's much more taxing on the body. So I think that's going to play a big part. If England can't bat for long periods of time, I just don't think you stand a chance. Australian bowlers are too good in Australian conditions, and I think they'll rip through any batting lineup if they're given decent periods of rest. So if they've got a day and a half rest between innings, they'll just rip through everyone. But the other thing I think won't work is if you look at a lot of the innings that I've watched a lot of Bazball innings over in England. English grounds are a lot smaller than Australian grounds, and I think a lot of people forget that as well. There was a number of sixes in the Ashes where it just crept over the boundary, where someone was sitting on the fence going, "Oh, I might catch it, and it just go over their head. In Australia, you can't do that. Instead of 60 to 65 meter boundaries in England, pretty much every Australian ground's 80-meter boundaries minimum. They're big boundaries. So to clear the rope in Australia, it's a lot more difficult. So if you're going to play aerial and you're going to play aggressive, it's a lot riskier to do that in Australia. And for those two reasons, I think England will be better than their last few series, just purely because they got a better side, than what they've previously brought over. But I still think, and I mean this respectfully, I think you're going to get smashed if you come out and play like that.
I'm before we say goodnight for tonight, I'm just gonna throw some stuff out there back at you at that. So now and then, and to be honest, since we've started playing this bad ball cricket, as people like to say, I think we've become smarter in the way we play cricket, and it's not just about the sixes; it's about
The fours.
just the fours as well. And yes, you're looking at 80-meter boundaries, but that means that your boundaries are bigger anyway. So you can't have those people on the fence in those areas. So there's more places for us to hit. And also, I'm just looking here. So Mitchell Stark probably won't be there. If he is, he's going to be 35. You've got Pat Cummins, who will be 32. Scotty Boland absolutely won't be playing because he'll be 36. So your pace bowlers at the moment, obviously people can come out the woodwork in the next 18 months.
Australia's
Kane
got
Richardson, I understand that, but the ones that are looking at the moment, Kane Richardson, he probably won't be playing. Jai Richardson possibly, but he does seem to be better in the shorter stuff. Lance Morris looks like an absolute gun, and Spencer Johnson looks good. Hazelwood will be 34, so I don't think he'd be playing. And then it sort of trickles off a little bit, and these players have got a lot of learning to do and a lot of getting used to Test cricket. So it
Yeah,
might be it might be one of them where if you've got the same crooks or almost crooks of players, then that I think you might be right. It'll be very close. But I think if you've got to bleed some newbies in there, I think that's where a stable England. So I think it all determines on whether England have got the same sort of squad that we do now. Obviously there'll always be a few changes, but if we've got the same sort of core, I think that's what will determine the whole Ashes series.
Yeah, for me, all those fast bowlers have come out and said they want to play in that Ashes series, and I think that'll be their last, if I'm honest. For Hazelwood and Stark, I think Cummins will play on a little bit longer than them.
Yeah.
But I think all of them will be there. Nathan Lyon said that he wants to play into his 40s, and I think he will.
Because he's
Being
a
a
god.
spinner, yeah. I actually think he's going to go past Shane Warne.
You think?
I think so. If he says he's going to play for another 4 years, he's
Yeah.
just said what he wants to do, because he said he wanted to be on the next England tour. So, that's 3.5 years away. So
He deserves it. He deserves it. I think, and maybe this will be one for the next podcast. But yeah, he's a phenomenal player, and he's a great bloke. So
yeah,
Before
So I think the bowling attack will be there, and I think the majority of the batting will be there. I think the only one in doubt, the only one I can't see playing, and I don't know. We spoke about it earlier whether or not he scores runs is Khawaja. Smith said he wants to be there. Labuschagne will be there. Head will be there. Green will be there. Mitch Marsh will be there. I don't think it's a much different Australian side to what we've got now.
well, when we do the pod about a month before it starts, we're gonna have to dig this one out and just listen to what we said and see who was right.
Listen, boys, before we wrap this one up, I hope nobody minds. I just want to make a completely separate point that's not cricket related, if that's okay.
Of course.
It's been a very tough few days for myself as a Liverpool fan. Jurgen Klopp yesterday decided that he, at the end of the season, will no longer be Liverpool manager, and I've just got one message. Well, I've technically got two, but I just hope we don't mind that I can just say this message and then are we okay just to end it there, if that's okay?
Yep.
Go on.
Let me
go
ahead.
on.
So,
We'll let you crying Scousers finish off.
Jurgen Norbert Klopp, I just want to say, I absolutely love you. I'll miss you. My happiness is never going to come back. It's never going to get better than what it is now. Obviously, wish you all the best in the future. Hope that I hope that you come back after your little break to us. It's not going to happen, but I would love it. I just wish you all the best. I love you like a father. I can't have actually any more words to say how much I love you. There's just too much. But what I will say is, you have given us everything. Now, my second message is to Liverpool Football Club. Now, if there's a vacancy going, I do understand that there is a need for a manager. Now, I'm not saying anything, but I've just taken my hometown, who are in the Vanarama National League North, to the Premier League, and I'm doing quite well. So just think about that. Just consider me. It'd be a dream. Just have me all there. I'll be in. Okay.
On that ludicrous note, thank you very much, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
And we'll speak next month.
We'll speak next month.
Cheers, boys.
See you later, boys.
Love yous.
See you in a bit.